We are joined today by Doug Baker, who is the Public Information Officer for Dublin City Schools in Ohio. And Doug, thanks so much for joining us today. And tell us a little bit about your communication office and Dublin City Schools, the makeup of that.
Sure, Holly. My pleasure to be here today. So Dublin City Schools is the 11th largest in Ohio, which puts us at about 16,300 students. We are a growing district, so over the next decade, we need 2 more elementary schools, a 5th middle school, additions to our high schools. The reason I bring that up is, in Ohio anyway, we have to be on the ballot for voter approval for new buildings and for operating dollars. And so when you're growing, it's a different set of circumstances. Not that your communication strategies and tools aren't the same, they probably are, but it's the backdrop of everything that we do here right now. So I've been a communications director for Dublin City Schools for 15 years. 3 years prior to that in a district called Pickerington, which is another big district here in the Columbus area with about 9,000 students. So about almost 20 years now I've worked with pretty big districts in Ohio. And so we're going to talk today about some of the things we do in terms of two-way communication.
Yes, and when we all know, right, when we have to go to our voters, the time that we ask them is not the time to try and connect with them, right?
No, absolutely
So
not.
this is an ongoing thing, and I'm going to try and put up a slide here because, boy, you guys really do a lot. And so up here, just for our audience, so I saw Doug at an NSPR conference in Chicago a couple years ago and was just so impressed with so many things that they do that I was going to reach out to him for more information. So why keep it all to myself? So we wanted to make this a LunchiNar and kind of spread what you do. They have a Key Communicators Network, which I think a lot of us probably do. Senior Citizens Advisory Council, a new parent university, Business Advisory Council, PTO President's Group, and a Student Advisory Council. And the ones that are, I have a little star next to are the ones that we're going to talk about more today. But if we can get to some of the other ones, we will certainly do that as well. If you guys are online, go ahead and type in the chat group if you have one of those groups. I'd be curious to see who has a Key Communicators Group or Student Advisory Council, something along those lines. But we'll kind of keep those questions and how you do that. So Doug, let's start with the Key Communicators Network. I know I have one, and I actually learned about that. It's kind of been trending, right, for several years now. Heard about it at a previous NSPR conference and started that up, but mine could use some tweaking. So talk about how you started that, what the makeup is of that.
Sure. So in our district, what we did about 3 years ago now, we started the Key Communicators Group that meets once a month at night. And of course, no administrator needs another night meeting, but it's like you said, Holly, we're in a constant campaign type of mode in our jobs. And if you're only talking to your folks a year out or 6 months out of a levy request, it's too late, as you said. So we do a lot of this for that reason, but it's a communication, the ongoing communications platforms that we have. Most of them have a pretty good history here now. So Key Communicators is about 3 years old. And what we did is we hand selected some folks geographically balanced around our district. We didn't want, our district's about 47 square miles. So we didn't want, we have about 40 members. We didn't want 30 of them to be from this side of town or anything like that. So we picked people based on geography and interest and people we knew. And what I've done is I have a parent run that group for the most part. She is the liaison to the group. She sends out the emails when I have something that I'd like the group to share via their own social media. She is the one who contacts them and says, hey, here's some stuff going on in the district. Could you put this out on your Nextdoor and your Facebook and that type of stuff? The reason I've chosen to do it that way is I don't do a lot of PR on the fact that we have a Key Communicators Group. I don't want those folks to get a reputation as district shills, for lack of a better way to say it, or, they spend all this time with the superintendent and the communications guy. Of course, they're going to say this and this. I don't want that. I want them to have their reputations to be secure. And so it's not a secret. We do say, hey, Key Communicators meeting every now and then on Twitter or something like that, but I don't make a big effort to promote that from a publicity standpoint for that reason.
Let me interrupt you real quick. How did it come to have a parent run that, and how did you get that parent to run it? Because like I run mine, but it would be wonderful to have really them kind of run themselves with me providing information, right? How did you go about getting that person to do that?
So obviously there's a lot of trust involved there. And this is somebody that I had known and had a lot of history here, who was interested and still involved. And so, yeah, it's not, you can't just pick somebody out and say, hey, would you like to be, our key communicator lead? There's got to be some relationship building. And when I say she runs it, she's really the conduit. She's the person who contacts the key communicators when we need something posted or lets them know about meetings but we set the agendas, and I want to make sure that that's really clear. So, what we're going to talk about at a key communicator meeting is the superintendent and myself. And we try as hard because, we're talkers by profession, and, superintendents, they also tend to talk at times. We want to talk a lot about what's going on in the district, and we want to keep these meetings to an hour, but we also want to have the open-ended conversation. What are you hearing out there? That's how we end every meeting. When I say end, you ask that question of 25 people, you're probably going to be there another 40 minutes because you're going to get a range of things that run from something that is, oh yeah, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. We need to address that district-wide to somebody's personal issue, so to speak. And so that's just part of the deal with key communicators. I'm sure those of you who have those, you've experienced that, hey, my son's on the swim team and we don't have enough swimming pool space or whatever it might be, which really technically isn't a big picture key communicator issue, but those things do come up.
So do you guys come to the meetings then with one or two topics that you want to share, or just sort of a rundown of, hey, here's what's going on?
Yeah.
Because engaging them, I think, sometimes is a tough part too, so that you're not standing there just talking at them for an hour.
Absolutely. We don't want it to be a sit and get for them where my superintendent and I are doing a PowerPoint and half an hour goes by and we're the only ones talking. Absolutely. We do come with 2 or 3 topics of the day, of the month, that we make sure that, hey, here are the key talking points. If you see this on social media, if you hear this at the store, we always use the Kroger example here. There's so much in school communication that starts with the phrase and the sentence. Well, I heard the school district was going to do blank by somebody you run into at a store, right? And so knowing that, we want to make sure folks have as much correct information as possible. So we come with some topics. We want it to be interactive. It's without that, it's really just another presentation from the talking heads.
Right. And you usually end up with a lot of good information when you throw out that question at the end. What are you hearing? Are you surprised sometimes by what you get back?
Sometimes, what it really helps us do, because we have 20 schools, and so it helps us discern, is something a Glacier Elementary issue or is it a district-wide elementary issue? Is it burning here or just here? And so that's what's really useful, I think, is things that are global or things that are regional or local to a specific schools where it really helps. And it's like a little focus group, every time we do one, because there are things that, the things that probably we think at times wouldn't move the meter, so to speak, or really bothering people, or they're really, people are really happy and proud about something that does take you aback a little bit. So it's been great.
How's the attendance? How many people do you typically have, and what's successful in your eyes?
Yeah, so we have about 45 people on the roster, knowing we'll get about half that.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. I'd say we are 20 to 25. Every time that we meet, we tried to alternate. When we started this, we'd have some at 7:30 in the morning. We'd have some at 7 at night. We got the feedback, just have them at nights. That's when most of us can come. So we've been pleased with the district level attendance. And then last year, we took this whole concept down to the building level. So now all 20 of our schools have building level key communicators.
Oh, wow.
It's really given us some more infrastructure to, again, address those things that are, don't bring your dog to the bus loop, and the things that are about my school, the PTO fundraiser that they want to talk about. We now have the building level to do that.
Yeah. And where do you meet? Do you meet at the school?
We have a little technology center that we meet at. It used to be a house, for lack of a better way to say it, and so it's a different dynamic. We found that, because if we meet here at central office, we're going to be around the typical rectangular boardroom, and everybody kind of sits with their hands folded. It's more of a formal atmosphere, and we didn't want that because it doesn't produce conversation. Mm-hmm. So we went to a place that's more like a living room, and so it just psychologically it makes a huge difference in how much you can hear from folks then.
Yeah, we ended up going to a local coffee shop
Yeah,
and kind of as they're closing, so it's pretty quiet, and it did make for a different atmosphere.
absolutely.
Do you invite like your principals? Are they a part of it, or is it really just the key communicators?
Yeah, every now and then we'll have a guest speaker, so to speak, on a topic that that person is the expert in. What I do is I make sure if something comes to the district level key communicators from a certain building or a certain area of the district, I report back to those principals. Hey, one of your folks said this at district level key communicators, and they do the same. They have a Google sheet that they fill out for me that just kind of lists, hey, here's what we talked about at our October key communicators. Here's some things I didn't know the answer to, or here's some things that I think need some more information. So after these meetings, yes, the principals and myself, we do kind of debrief both ways on it.
That's a good way to do it. Before we kind of move on to the next one, what was it about your district that it was like, we need to make this an effort? We want to, start these advisory councils and the communicators network. I mean, you guys have a lot going on. You've got some busy nights. What was the push for it?
So really the push, twofold. I think we did some focus group work through professional service about 6 years ago now. And the main source of school information in our community, the number one source, according to this focus group, was other people. And again, as communications professionals, you're like, oh gosh, the one thing we can't control. But having said that, if that is the truth, then we got to make sure the other people, the people who are going to have the Kroger conversations, we have as many people with the correct information as possible. The number two source here in our district was the local newspaper still, even in 2000, I guess it's probably 2010. I'm sure that's still the case today, because here in our district, we're going to have 65, 70% of our residents don't have kids in the schools at any given time. And I think that's a national stat that's probably around the country. And so put all those factors together, and we just needed to spend more time in face-to-face conversations, because putting on a newsletter and social media is awesome and we use it, but parents are the ones really engaged in that. And to try to get, we have a lot of empty nesters on key communicators. We have non-parents on key communicators. We're trying to get to everybody because everybody votes and everybody's got a stake in a public school district. That's one of the big challenges. Our parents are our built-in audience. How do we get to the rest of them?
Well, exactly. And what do you think the success is of getting half of those people to show up at a monthly meeting? I mean, I struggle with attendance, and we try and do quarterly meetings. Maybe they're not regular enough. I don't know. I don't know.
No, I think, again, you intentionally build your roster so that if half of them don't come, you still got a nice meeting. That's part of it, because I think it depends on the size of your district, but obviously it's a lot of our instincts to start with pilots or small. Okay, we're going to have 8 people on key communicators. If 4 of them have a conflict, suddenly it's a really small meeting and you feel like nobody's there. And so we try to build the number up a little bit. I think, too, though, I think we've got a lot of people who really value FaceTime with the superintendent. This is an hour and a half of getting to speak with him in a very anecdotal way that isn't a formal presentation type of thing. And it's just it makes people feel good and connected and important, when they can sit with the superintendent and talk about those things.
Right. Anything you want to add on that maybe I didn't ask you that would be good to share out?
No, I think, I recommend it. I think the question I get probably a lot about key communicators, especially if you want to take this to the building level, your principals are going to ask you, how's this different from my PTO? I'm already meeting with them. And for us, it's probably different everywhere. Our PTOs, they're awesome, but they're really focused on fundraising and bringing in authors and those types of things. And so their mission is a little bit different. And so you may have some overlap in terms of some of the same players, but we intentionally try to not do that here. We want PTO and key communicators to be distinctly different groups with different memberships.
Right. Parents, even though they're a built-in audience, they can be really difficult to engage as well. We want them to attend these things and certain things, and they don't. So is that the idea behind Parent University? Let's talk about what that is. And I'll put up your the website link here, or just the main page of it, so people can see that. If I can find it. I'll look for that real quick. But go ahead and explain a little bit of what it is and how that got started.
So Parent University, that's exactly right, Holly. Parent University is all about community engagement. And it's been fantastic. It is. So what it is Dr. Hoadley, my superintendent, he has public coffees. We'll go to a coffee shop and say, in addition to key communicators and the other things we do, come on in and talk to us about whatever you'd like to talk about. And as he had those over his first few years here, it just became evident that as much as we tweet the FAFSA night, as much as we Facebook, come learn about this and this, we still had an awful lot of people who just didn't know a lot of the things that we wanted them to know about the machinations of public school in Ohio, but also things like college and career prep. You know, that's one of the things that we heard over and over. Is it's very intimidating for parents who've never been through it. And we understand that. There's a lot to that. And so last year we started Parent University. And what we did is we had a one-day event where we, at one of our middle and elementary schools, they're kind of built together. So we had parents in both places. We put together 60 courses, so to speak. We had our staff volunteer to teach them. We had 600 people come. And it was just, you know, a home run hit. And again, what we did on the front end, we did a lot of survey work. What would you like to know more about? So we did some SurveyMonkey stuff in all these stakeholder groups that we have, as I call them, key communicators. We asked them, what would you like to learn more about? Took notes and got answers like mental health issues for students, college and career prep, how does the world of special education. So a lot of questions on a lot of specialty things related to education. So we put together our little one-day course selection there, and we got lucky because it was 50 degrees that day in February. If it was 10 or snowing, it wouldn't have been so great probably. But yeah, you can see the pictures here, and so it was really well attended. Moving forward, then we decided if we're going to sustain this, we need to probably stretch that day out over the entire school year, because there was a lot of logistics involved in this event. Because in my district, it's go big or go home, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. So we had T-shirts made, and we had some swag put together. We had lunch for them. We had parents go through the lunch line like their kids do, so they've experienced a lunch. I'm from the 80s, unfortunately, and when I was in school, my lunch, everything on the tray was square, and there were little squares in the square tray, and even the mashed potatoes were square somehow. It was fascinating. And it's so different now. If you haven't been in school in 25 or 30 years, and a lot of our lunch or cafeterias look like mall food courts. And so it's just really good to get the public in the buildings, one. And what I love about it, I think the most, is the public getting to hear from the experts in their fields. We have 70, like I'm sure all of us do, 75%, 80% of our staff has master's degrees and are experts in what they're doing. And it's just really good PR to have those folks talk to our parents, because what that leads to then is, wow, my kids are in really good hands. So
sorry about that. So your kickoff day was like one long day of different classes that everybody could attend. Now it's spread out over the calendar. Although I've looked at your November calendar, you've got 4, 5, 6 events on there. How do you get the teachers to sign on? Do they volunteer? Do you pay them? Does this cost a lot of money to do?
It does not cost a lot of money. So two things, because we talked through that, when we started this, how is this, are we going to sustain this? I don't like to sustain things on the backs of volunteers, so to speak. So for our staff, they get CEUs, so they get continuing education units in contact hours for being part of Parent University. One of the keys to, if you're thinking about doing something like this, we just did a presentation here in Ohio at our statewide conference. I'm happy to share. I think maybe Holly, I emailed it to you. I can't remember exactly. But, happy to share it with anybody. But rebrand the things you already do. There's already a heck of a lot of night meetings at the high school level, middle school level. You're already doing a lot of this. Just rebrand it as Parent U. Add a couple of things, and suddenly you'll be there quicker than you think. And one of the reasons our schedule looks so crowded, because we don't have the capacity as big as we are. I mean, I've got 4 people in my department, but I got a full-time secretary, one's a half-time alum, I've got a community outreach person. So I have some capacity a lot of places don't have. I've been a one-person shop most of my career, so I get it. If you're jealous of my 4-person department.
Yes, I am.
We don't have the capacity to go out and find and hunt up new classes all the time. We've got to brand what we're already doing. So that's a big key to making that work.
Did you find teachers excited to help out, realizing the need for this?
Absolutely. But again, with the caveat that in a one-time situation, it's easier to build that. Sure, I'll come and teach the class. You're going to ask me to do it 6 times a year. We got another conversation. So, but yeah, absolutely. I think, teachers and staff and administration too saw it as an opportunity to maybe cut down on some emails asking about some of these topics. If we can get 50 people, we had 100 people at 6, 7 of these classes in February last year. So
Wow.
6, 7 more, we had 80 people. There's 180 people now that maybe won't send us emails necessarily on a topic because they learned all about it at Parent U.
Yeah. So we have a question here. Do you have multiple high schools? Yes, you have several. Does branding it as Parent U mean that anyone is invited, and do your schools push back on that?
Yeah, great question. Another reason we wanted to do this, wanted to start Parent U, we have 3 high schools here in Dublin City Schools. And obviously when you have a college and career prep night at Dublin Kaufman High School, everyone's going to think that is for Kaufman parents. One of the things the Parent U has allowed us to do is start to break that down a little bit under the Parent U umbrella. And we had a logo contest, and so we have a logo for Parent U, and we branded it. This is a parent university session open to the entire district. Anybody can come, and there are 2 reasons for that. One is scheduling. You know, parents are as scheduled as anybody else, and so your night at Kaufman's one night. If they can't come, then what? We have 3 high schools. Now you have 3 opportunities at least to come to not a Kaufman session, but a Parent U session. We didn't really have pushback on it in terms of the, you know, this is ours, because the topics that I'm talking about apply to all of our high school students. There are still going to be events where you're going to have, I saw at the elementary level not too long ago, a reading night for a certain elementary with a high ELL population that is theirs and that is not a Parent U session. And not everything is open to the entire district, but the things that are, we're branding them globally so that we can get out of that parochial feeling of, well, that's Kaufman's, that's Jerome's, those are our high schools. So it's a good question though, because that does come up.
And I guess what has the response been so far this year with the classes that you've had? Good attendance? How's it been going?
Very well. Good attendance. You know, I think we'd spent, and again, I guess the other thing I would, the caveat, took us 6 months to get February off the ground. And we spent a couple months branding it before February. So we intentionally built up a lot of excitement, for lack of a better word. And so the brand was strong by the time we got to the one-day event. And so it was easier for us to carry that through to the next school year. And so our attendance has been good. What we are finding now is, because we spread it out over the year, well, I can't come that night, just like we were talking about. Can you videotape it? Again, I'm from the 80s. I'm sorry for the antiquated term. Videotapes anything. And so we're starting to look into a video resource library. There's good and bad with the concept. You know, if you do too much of that, you'll soon have nobody sitting in your classes, so to speak. And honestly, that's part of the PR value here, is that personal interaction with your staff. And 2 is, we have some sessions that really the impact is in person. We have a deputy superintendent actually who does a session about drug use and abuse and some things parents may not know, and like how he does a little piece where he takes some hand soap, run it through a cheesecloth, and suddenly you have 100% alcohol. The power in that is seeing it for the first time and seeing him do it in front of you. And so we don't want to videotape everything for that reason.
Yeah.
But we are looking into voiceovers over PowerPoints, things like college and career prep, and just the mechanics of certain things aren't going to change. And so we are looking into that.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it just at the high school level now, or all the classes kind of geared toward those parents, or is it district wide?
No, absolutely not. K-12. And so we had a concerted effort in the one-day launch event to have something at every level. We had a lot of things at every level because, again, we do big. But no, there's been all kinds of sessions that would be more for, we have a session one of our middle school principals does about apps that your middle schoolers use that you have no idea if you're a parent. And again, another eye-opening, wow, never heard of most of that kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of here, we have a lot of interest in gifted services and special ed services. And those conversations start from kindergarten on. So, no, Parent U is a K-12 endeavor, and it's not high school focused at all. I'd say high school is where the most existing things were already built in that we could rebrand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we've had to maybe do a little more work at the lower levels with, you know, what else could we do here? But it's been K-12 and it's been all positive.
And I just lost my train of thought for a second there. Sorry. Let's talk about what this could, or I guess, how do you see this playing out in the smaller district? If you are a one-man shop, and you kind of talked about that, you obviously have a huge staff to pull from, a lot of parents, so turnout's going to be pretty good. How do you see a parent university playing out at maybe a smaller district? For example, mine's 2,300 students.
Sure.
One high school, one middle school, 3 elementaries. How do you see it working that way?
I think the basics still apply.
Mm-hmm.
I still would start with the survey, and start with the conversations. What do parents, where do they feel like there's a gulf of information? Just do it to scale. You're not going to have a one-day event with 60 classes and 600 attendees. Maybe you start with a semester-long schedule of 8 to a dozen things, and 6 of those you already do. And you've rebranded for 2 months before that, and slowly it builds until it's got some inertia on its own. And, because what has happened for us is staff sees this go on and say, I get a lot of parents asking me about blank. I'd like to teach a parent U class on blank. And so they come to us and volunteer, and your courses build. So, it really hasn't cost us money at all. Other than the branding that we did in terms of a logo contest and T-shirts and that kind of stuff, you can do this without any of that.
Well, and that brings up a good point too, before we get into our final topic. A lot of this face-to-face engagement, these outreach programs, whatever you want to call them, they don't have to cost a thing, right?
Now, whenever I talk about communications, it's fascinating how much of what we do really can be done effectively for very little to no money, whether it's social media or what we're talking about today. These face-to-face conversations, you may bring in some coffee or something, or sometimes we'll buy lunch for senior citizens when we talk about that here in a couple minutes, but they're not big expenses at all.
Yeah. Well, let's move right into senior citizens. Huge, very important group for all of us in our districts. They likely don't have kids. They might have grandkids, but they're the voters. They're the ones that you want to keep informed of the school. So talk about your Senior Citizens Advisory Council, so it's an important name there, and what they do.
Sure, yeah, no, these are high propensity voters, so absolutely important. So Senior Citizens Advisory Council here is probably 7 years old. And it started with the concept, again, of the 65 to 70% of a district aren't your parents. And so this effort to reach out to them. And it's just been, for all the things that we do, this is right at the top of things I would recommend. The goodwill that we have earned with Senior Citizens Council, not just with them, but the mere fact that we do it. And here's a little thing that I would recommend. You'll get pushback probably at the beginning from your ADs. Give your senior citizens free admission to your athletic events and plays if you don't, because it's fantastic. The value that they get out of it, the PR value that you'll get out of it. We're the Dublin City Schools. We have Irish is our theme, Dublin. So we have a little shamrock sticker that they can put on their ARP card and a driver's license, and you'll get questions like, how old do I have to be do you consider yourself a senior citizen? Great, you're in for free, right? You don't want to get draconian with, well, you got to be 65 by a certain date or anything like that. Right. And the value that you get out of that will make up for any minor gate loss. That's an aside, but that did come out of the Senior Citizens Council. So here's how this works and how this is set up real quick as we get to the end of our time here. So we started we're fortunate to have a lot of assisted living facilities here in town. We have a really active city rec center that's got a senior center component. That's where we went to recruit. And now we have buses coming from these senior living facilities coming to our central office. They have lunch with the superintendent 4 times a year, so it's quarterly. Mm-hmm. So we do 2 in the fall. We take the break in the winter for a lot of these folks go to Florida. And then we come back in the spring. And we have a student performance forum. We'll have a singing group. We'll have some strings. We also do academic demonstrations. We also do a lot with technology. They're fascinated by technology, and we love to share that with them. And then they go back and they talk about what they saw, what they experienced at the senior citizens lunch with the folks they live with and their neighbors. It's just been fantastic. To the point of, that's a classic stereotypical no voter demographic. We started winning senior citizen centers at the ballot box. And part of it's because of the senior council.
Now, when you went to these places, did you say, hey, we want to start this? Who wants to be involved, or kind of how did the audience build?
It was an all call. It was, you go to the director, and what we did is we created some flyers, and we would go out and do in-person presentations when requested. And, there was a little bit of legwork at the front end of making the directors of these facilities understand how much we value this demographic, and these are our district residents, and they vote, and we care what they have to say about the district. It's been fascinating. I bet our Senior Citizens Council right now is 40% retired educators. You know, they worked in a district in some capacity, and so this is an informed group. And so, you know, word of mouth spreads it. We started that pretty small. We probably had 12 to 15 our first senior citizen lunch. We probably have 40 on the roster at this point, and you know, hopefully it'll grow from there.
And I assume that meeting kind of maybe ends the same way as your key communicators. You know, what questions do you have? What are you hearing? What do you want to know? That type of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a little more formal in terms of presentations, just because where we have the meeting lends itself to visuals and PowerPoints and technology demonstrations, but it's the same thing does apply. You know, and it's really, you know, one of the things that we heard about often and early from this group is I see these buses driving around town with no kids on them, and I get it, right? As a layperson, you kind of react to that with what the heck. But then when we talk about our triple turn routes, and here's why you see a bus empty at this time of day, and here's why you see one sitting in the Walmart parking lot at another time, so it doesn't have to go all the way back to the garage, talking them through that, and then suddenly that's something that had been bothering a lot of them for a long time is done. And so again, it's just something that would be harder to get to in writing or Twitter,
Right.
but something to explain in 10 minutes, you know, face to face.
Yeah, such a value in being able to simply have that conversation. We just went through a bond thing, and you know, our superintendent did some community forums, and they, you know, there weren't 100 people there. There were only a few, but it was a fantastic opportunity to simply have a conversation about just a misunderstanding.
Yep. And nothing clears those up quicker and more thoroughly than face-to-face conversation.
Now, how many do you typically have attend? How's it grown?
Very well. I'd say senior count, they really look forward to it. You know, it's really become part of their activity list. And I'd say last one we had 36. We will have the low winds probably 25. Any more than 40, we're going to outgrow our room, which I hope is a problem we have at a point. You know, we'll find someplace bigger, but we're right in that range. And we do feed them lunch. Things, and it's funny, we've tailored the menu to what they like, and then we have our food service does it, and it's just been a huge win.
That's awesome. That's very powerful. So the last thing on the list, let's talk on the Student Advisory Council, because also another vocal group, right? And soon to be our graduates. Now you do this at the high school level only, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And what we did was we did 2 representatives from each grade level at all 3 of our high schools for 24 students, meet with the superintendent about 5 times a year. Again, we bus them over to central office. A couple of different purposes. It's evolved over time, but you know, our superintendent wanted to hear directly from the students, because when students have concerns, when students have issues, they're going to be filtered through another adult in almost all cases, unless he or she's got an opportunity to sit down and talk to students. And you know, over time, it's just been a really powerful tool for both parties involved. The students will say, "Hey, did you realize that the parking pass issue at these 2 schools is blank?" And you're talking to the person that can fix that pretty quick. And then they see results, and so you build this mutual trust. And so again, it's been another big powerful thing for us. And right out of the gate too, it became a service committee, and they started to talk about wanting to do something for charity and raise money. And so we play dodgeball here every spring, probably something that a lot of places do, but all 20 of our schools are involved. We have student teams and adult teams. Our teachers play. We've raised $130,000 playing dodgeball.
Holy cow.
over a 10-year period. But that's a lot of money. And so Student Advisory Council, there's a little logistical work with how do you pick the kids?
Yep, that's my question. How do you pick the kids?
Bus them to central office. You got to rely on the principals to pick the kids. You know, it's harder to pick the freshmen when we were going to have a meeting in September. They don't know them that well yet. But it's been, I recommend it. It's just been a huge thing for us.
Mm-hmm. And I can see where that can be tailored. For example, you have 3 high schools, we have 1, but you could pick multiple students and probably get a nice variety too. Like, you're not going to pick the ones that are all on student council and whatever. You probably want them to maybe not even know each other, right?
Right, and they don't when they come in. You know, they're from different schools, but it's kind of the same applies to PTO versus key communicators. don't give me your principal advisory council kids. Give me some different kids. Give me a mix, and they do. And so it's been great.
I'm so curious what the atmosphere is like, especially that first meeting. Is it kind of silent? How do you kind of get them to talk?
Takes a while. It does, especially the younger students. You know, the upperclassmen can model that for this is a safe environment. You can say anything in here, and you can say, I don't like my biology teacher, and it's not leaving this room. And it takes a while though, because your freshmen especially are going to be a little, you know, I'm here with the superintendent. I'm here with seniors. What am I supposed to do, think, say? And it comes.
Do you keep the same students from year to year then on that? So is some sort of mentorship or some type of, I don't know, explanation of how it all works?
Yeah, so the students do turn over to the next year, and you replace your freshmen every year. Your seniors graduate, and so there's a little bit of an explanatory letter that we send home of what the purpose is. That's how we kind of explain to parents what it is that we're doing. But you know, word of mouth travels too amongst the kids.
And what are some of the types of questions your superintendent might ask them? And I assume the principals aren't in the meetings. It's just kind of them, right?
Principals are not in a meeting. They and that's by design, of course. You want the kids to be able to speak freely about whatever it is that's on their minds. But it's very general. Just ask them, you know, what's going on at your schools? Tell me some positive. Tell me some negative. And that usually is enough to stir conversation. So that's a meeting where we don't prepare any kind of presentation. It's a conversation based on what they want to talk about.
And you feed them, right?
Absolutely. And we have food service do it sometimes. We'll go out to bring Chick-fil-A in or something like that. So that does cost a little, but not much.
Yeah, and worth it, I'm sure, for what you get out of it. Same with like the senior citizens, you know, the little money you have to spend maybe sometimes, huge return.
Yep, absolutely. No question.
All right, we've got about 8 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and type them in now. I'll do some wrap up questions here. Obviously this is working really well because you probably have a superintendent who wants to do this. I mean, this might not work everywhere, right? Do you have to have the right personality or?
Yeah, no, you have to have buy-in from your superintendent on all of this, or none of it's going to work. And average superintendency here in Ohio is 3 years. And so we've had 2 superintendents in the time that we've had most of these groups. And, you know, once you have these things established, you'd be hard pressed to find a superintendent who's going to come in and say, you know, nope, we're not doing senior council anymore, because it's just, there's too much good about it. So, but to start it, you've got to have superintendent buy-in, no doubt.
How much buy-in do you need from your other administrators as well?
You know, I'd say for building level key communicators is going to be your toughest to get buy-in from your principals, because they're going to look at it at the beginning as, are you giving me another night meeting? Because, you know, high school folks especially are, they're out every night at whatever anyway. And so, and my answer to that is, doesn't have to be. We have a lot of key communicator meetings at the building level take place during the day. It just depends on your demographic of your school. Some can be before work at 7 in the morning. Some can be at 10:30, depending on, you know, who's on your group.
Now the PTO president's meeting, since you have a second here, how often do you get them together? And is it more getting information from them as to what's happening at the building level?
Once a month, we have PTO presidents, and I'd say it's more presentations from central office so that they can go back to their schools and kind of speak with the district level talking points in their circles. Yeah, I mean, it's not as free flowing as key communicators in terms of two-way conversation, but obviously we do leave time for that as well.
Well, it seems like in that role, they probably serve as kind of a liaison then between central office and their parents.
Yeah, no question about it. And, you know, PTO presidents, we got 20 schools that are in, so you have 20 cultures. You know, our buildings are different. They're different demographically, they're different structurally. We have elementaries with 800 kids, we have elementaries with 400 kids. And so you're going to have a big variance in that room of PTO presidents who've got their building interests. And so we want to have, you know, some district level things as well.
And just to wrap this up, Doug, thanks, first of all, so much for sharing all this. This is a lot of information, but just some good tools that people can use to kind of start these. What is your favorite part about doing all of this?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I like about it. You know, I really, Senior Council and Parent University have become a couple of my favorites. I think my favorite part from professional standpoint, though, is seeing in the faces of light bulbs come on when the superintendent has time to explain something for 3 minutes that an email or a web post just isn't going to be able to do in the same way. And so that's just been fantastic, probably my favorite thing.
Well, gosh, you guys have been doing a lot of things and well, and I'll be following your parent university and the types of classes, because what a great example. And we can share that link out too with everybody who's on today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and we've talked about that, and you have one night here and one night here, but I think packaging it into, you know, a university and kind of a class schedule really puts it to a different level.
It does. You know, I think because I as parents, especially as I have 8th graders, and hey, they're having a meeting at the school. That isn't real, like moving my meter, you know, whatever it might be, whether it's parent-teacher conference or whether it's something I really need to know about, which is career exploration pathway programs at the high school for your middle schooler. So a lot of it's in the packaging, a lot of it's in the branding. And so we've done a lot of work there, and I think it's paying off.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I think we covered a lot, but if anybody, you know, Holly, feel free to give out my email address. If anybody online today or anybody that watches the recording has questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
All right. Doug, thank you so much. This is great information. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. In December, we're going to have Jason Wheeler rejoin us again from Texas, and we're talking about podcasting. So again, kind of another way to have that conversation with our audiences, and that'll be on Tuesday, December 19th. So again, Doug, thank you, and thanks everybody for joining us. Have a fantastic weekend.